Exculpation, indemnification.
Okay, the other really annoying clause to negotiate in leases is the indemnity clause. An indemnity basically says the indemnitor, and in this case it's the tenant, is going to indemnify that. We're going to protect the landlord from any loss, cost, damage, expense, claim, or charge arising out of or in any way connected with the fact that we're the tenant under this lease. That sounds pretty broad, and it is. So basically the tenant's saying to the landlord, anything that goes wrong here, my fault. I'm on the hook for it. I'm going to indemnify you. And remember, what are most insurance companies called? It's the Metropolitan Life Insurance and Indemnity Company, Annuity and Indemnity Company. So insurance policies are indemnity contracts. The indemnity clause in the lease basically says that the tenant's going to indemnify, act as the insurance company for the landlord when that happens. Now, it shouldn't be that big a deal because what's the tenant carrying? It's carrying the CGL coverage. You're carrying $1 million or maybe more of commercial general liability insurance issued by an insurance company that's got an A- from best and a financial class of 9, and everything should be fine. You've got the endorsement, everything should be fine. So the question is, what is the indemnity really about? The indemnity is about those third-party claims. So when your business invitee shows up and gets, run over by the golf cart in the parking lot, and their spouse sues for all the spousal things that spouses take, spouses claim that they've lost because the person's now paralyzed. That type of third-party claim, if your insurance company is gone, has a coverage defense, or is just dragging their heels, the landlord can look at the tenant and say, hey, you got to protect me on that. This is not my problem. So that's what the indemnity clause is about. Now, any good tenant's going to say, all right, I'm indemnifying you. You, Mr. Landlord, have to indemnify me back. If your people are stupid, or they're grossly negligent, or there's an act or omission that you commit that causes me damage that's not covered by my insurance, you should be indemnifying me. And remember, 3 days a week, George Pink is on that conference call, and most of the time I say, no, landlords don't indemnify tenants. That, for many years, has been the general position in most landlord-tenant transactions that I've been involved in, is that if you have a problem, you can always sue us, but I'm not going to give you a direct indemnity obligation because the nature of an indemnity claim in a lawsuit has a different standard of proof, it has different evidentiary stuff. It's easier to sue in an indemnity than on a breach of contract. And that's kind of a technical thing, but I want to bore you with it, but just take my word for it. It's easier for the tenant to make that claim when the landlord has an indemnity obligation back to the tenant. And my position as a landlord's lawyer is, no, I'm not doing that. There's been a shift, I would say, in the last 5 or 6 years where, and again, I think this is something that came out of the financial crisis we went through, where landlords were really desperate to get tenants into space, where landlords loosened up on that. And I kind of think this is a more fair way to do it, is that the tenant is responsible for indemnifying the landlord for anything that the tenant is the causation, is causes. Anything that happened in the premises or someone on the way to the premises, that's not the landlord's fault. And the landlord's indemnifying the tenant for any damages or problems that happen in the common areas, in the parking lot, in the walkways, in the lobbies. That's a more fair portion of the risk on indemnity obligations. And again, remember, it only kicks in where the insurance isn't covering it, but that can happen. So indemnities are tough. We spend a lot of time arguing about it. It's rare that they ever really get used or you actually end up suing on it. But again, because you're apportioning risk, you have to take into account. So typically tenants indemnify landlords, landlords don't indemnify tenants, but I'm seeing a trend in my experience in the markets where I practice that we're portioning it to wherever everyone has control.
What kind of limits would you see as expectations in an office lease coverage?
Typically you're seeing 1 million, in your basic office building, it's 1 million, 3 million, and then sometimes $5 million umbrella. I'm seeing in bigger buildings, with bigger tenants, sometimes you'll see that company up to 3 million, 5 million, and $10 million umbrella. It's pretty market driven. Usually nothing less than $1 million in suburban type stuff. Where this gets funky is I happen to have a biotech tenant client that I do work for all over the country, and they're handling life sciences type material. They're handling blood plasmas. So there you get asked for specialized stuff. Manufacturing facilities, you're asking for much higher levels. But in your basic office, your basic retail, it's 1 million, 3 million, and a 5 million umbrella. Is that what you guys typically see? Yep.
Mark, did you ever represent tenants that self-insure?
Bank of America.
Bank of America, yes. Kind of thinking that.